Armageddon. Just say the word. And what comes to mind? Probably a final, world-ending battle. And for centuries, we've all been told this epic showdown is gonna happen at one specific place, Megiddo. But what if we've all been reading the map wrong? Turns out the real meaning of Armageddon is way more cosmic and, frankly, way more interesting than you think.
Okay, so take a look at this. This picture gets right to the heart of the problem. You're looking at the ancient site of Megiddo in Israel. You see, the first part of the word Armageddon is har. That's Hebrew for mountain. But, well, just look at it. Megiddo is a plain. It's flat. Yeah, that little bump you see? That's what archaeologists call a tell. It's basically a man-made hill built up over centuries of people living and rebuilding in the same spot. It is not a natural mountain. So right off the bat, we have a mountain of Megiddo with no actual mountain. See, something's not right here.
All right, so to crack this thing open, we've got to go back to the original text. In Revelation chapter 16, verse 16, the writer John, he tells us the nations are gathered at a place called in Hebrew Armageddon. He's basically waving a huge flag for us, saying, hey, pay attention. This is a Hebrew word I'm just spelling out for you in Greek letters. The key isn't in the Greek. It's about figuring out the Hebrew John was thinking of.
And here's where a tiny little detail in the Greek text changes. Well, everything. It turns out, for centuries, we've probably been saying it wrong. See, in the original manuscripts, there's what's called a rough breathing mark right at the beginning. It's basically telling you to make a huh sound, like our letter H. So it's not Armageddon. It's really two words smashed together, Har-Mageddon. Okay, the first part is the easy bit. Har. It just means mountain in Hebrew. Simple as that. So that part's a given. Whatever this place is, it has to be a mountain. And that just makes the whole Megiddo theory, the one on a flat plain, even more of a head-scratcher. So the real mystery is, what in the world is Mageddon? All right, now it's tempting to just throw the old Megiddo theory out the window, but let's not be too hasty. Let's put it on trial. I mean, it's been the go-to explanation for ages, so there must be some reason for it, right? Let's look at the evidence for it, and then we'll see if it holds up. And at first glance, the case for Megiddo looks pretty solid. You've got the consonants, M, G, D. They seem to match up perfectly with the Greek. And then there's this key verse people always point to, from Zechariah 12. In that verse, the Hebrew for Megiddo is spelled Megiddon. Yep, with that final N sound, just like in Har-Mageddon. For a long time, this was considered the smoking gun. But, and this is a big but, here's the twist. If you actually read the rest of that chapter in Zechariah, a huge problem pops up. The passage is crystal clear. The big final battle against the nations, it happens in Jerusalem. Megiddo only gets mentioned as a way to describe how great the morning will be. And get this, the text explicitly calls it the plain of Megiddo. The Bible itself calls it a plain. So the star piece of evidence for the Megiddo theory actually ends up helping to tear it down. How ironic is that? Which leaves us to the question that just blows this whole thing wide open. If the Bible itself calls Megiddo a plain and says the final battle is actually in Jerusalem, then how on earth can Har-Mageddon be Mount Megiddo? It doesn't work. The traditional theory just kind of collapses under its own weight when you look at the text. Okay, so if it's not Megiddo, then what is it? This is where the real detective work begins, and it's pretty cool. A while back, some really smart scholars, like a guy named C.C. Torrey, came up with a totally different idea, a solution that unlocks the whole mystery with one just brilliant linguistic clue. Okay, lean in, because this is the key. In Hebrew, you've got a couple of different letters that can make a g-like sound. One of them is a letter called ein. It's this throaty sound from way back in your throat. Now, when ancient writers were trying to spell Hebrew words using Greek letters, they often used their letter gamma, the G, to represent that tricky ein sound. Think of the city Gomorrah. In Hebrew, that starts with an ein. In Greek, it starts with a gamma. So what does that mean? It means the MGD we see in the Greek of Mageddon might not be pointing to a Hebrew MGD at all. It could be pointing to a Hebrew M odd G.
And why is that a huge deal? Because it means Mageddon is probably the Greek way of spelling the Hebrew word moed. And Har-Moed, that's a really famous phrase in the Old Testament. It means the Mount of Assembly, or the Mount of Gathering. All of a sudden, this isn't about some random battlefield in northern Israel. We're talking about a place with massive theological importance.
And where do we find this Mount of Assembly? Boom! right here in Isaiah chapter 14. This passage is talking about this cosmic rebel, this angelic being who boasts that he's going to take over God's throne, which is located on the Ha-Moed. You see, this isn't just any old mountain. This is the command center of the universe. It's where the divine council meets. It's God's mountain. Now, that linguistic connection is already pretty convincing, right? But believe me, it gets even better. This new theory really clicks into place when you start noticing all the other clues hidden in plain sight, both in Revelation and back in the Old Testament. The literary context here is everything. Okay, think about this. In the entire book of Revelation, the author John only stops to tell us this word is Hebrew for two specific terms: Armageddon in chapter 16, and another word, Abaddon, back in chapter 9. When a writer does something that specific, that unusual, it's like he's screaming at us, hey, these two things are connected. Look closer. So let's do what he wants us to do. Let's put these two special Hebrew words right next to each other. And what do you see? A perfect intentional contrast. You have Armageddon, the Mount of Assembly, the highest heavenly realm. And then you have Abaddon, whose name means destruction. He's the angel of the bottomless pit, the underworld. It's the ultimate up versus the ultimate down. The highest of the high and the lowest of the low. It's a deliberate literary pairing. But wait, the wordplay gets even more clever. Remember that Hebrew word moed? It means gathering or assembly. Well, check this out. In the book of Job, the realm of the dead, which is Abaddon's turf, is called the house of gathering for all the living. So you get this amazing, ironic contrast, the heavenly gathering of God's council versus the grim gathering of the dead down in the abyss. Okay, so this Mount of Assembly, this cosmic mountain, where is it supposed to be on Earth? Well, Psalm 48 gives us a huge clue. It straight up says that Mount Zion, which is Jerusalem, is in the heights of Zaphon. And guess what Zaphon is? It's the exact same cosmic location that was paired with the Mount of Assembly back in that Isaiah 14 passage we looked at. The biblical writers are basically taking this cosmic geography, this map of the heavens, and stamping it right on top of Jerusalem. Now hang on, if you pull out a map, you'll see Jerusalem is in the south of Israel. So why on earth would they call it the heights of the north, which is what Zaphon means? Because it's not about a compass direction. In the ancient world, Zaphon was the name for the mythical mountain home of the gods. So the biblical writers are making a powerful theological point. They're saying, no, the real cosmic mountain, the true seat of power, isn't some pagan dwelling. It's Yahweh's mountain, Zion. This is about a vertical axis, heaven versus the pit, not north versus south. And that passage from Isaiah 14 just lays this out perfectly. It sets up this incredible contrast between the Yarkte Zaphon, literally the far reaches of Zaphon, or the heights of the north, and the Yarkte Bor, the far reaches of the pit. This is as high as you can go versus as low as you can go. The celestial zenith versus the netherworld nadir. It's heaven against the abyss. That is the real battlefield. So, when you put all these pieces of the puzzle together, the linguistics, the literary clues, the cosmic geography, a totally new picture of Armageddon starts to take shape. It's not about a dusty valley in Israel anymore. It's about something way, way bigger. So let's break it down. Armageddon is not the mountain of Megiddo. It's the Mount of Assembly, which is a theological codename for Mount Zion, for Jerusalem. It's the symbolic location of God's throne, the seat of the divine council, the headquarters of the cosmos. So the final battle isn't about territory. It's about sovereignty. It's a final showdown over who has the right to rule everything. You know, there's a line in the ancient Dead Sea Scrolls that describes the final conflict as a war of gods and men. And that just captures the essence of this perfectly. It's a war that might have echoes on Earth, but its real frontline is in the spiritual realm. It's about settling the question, once and for all, of who's truly in charge. And that really leaves us with a final, big idea to chew on. By decoding the word, we've completely reframed the event. So maybe we should stop looking for Armageddon on a map. Maybe we should see it as the final chapter in a story that didn't start on a battlefield, but started with a cosmic rebellion in the heavens. The real question isn't where the battle is fought, but what it is that's finally being decided.